Hello, hello. Welcome to the Wellness on Purpose podcast, where our intention is to provide you with impactful, educational, and realistic information to help you progress on your journey to live wellness on purpose now and for future generations. This podcast shares insights to current health trends with industry and brand leaders in the health and wellness world. This podcast is brought to you by Joanne's Place Health Foods from Peterborough and Lindsay, Ontario. My name is Marissa Lachlan. I'm a holistic nutritionist and functional lab practitioner. I've been working alongside Joanne's Place for the last 8 years, and I'm so excited to continue to be your host for this podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Wellness on Purpose podcast, where we dive deep into topics related to health, nutrition, and overall well-being. Today, we have an exciting and informative episode lined up for you. We will be discussing the role of healthy fats and oils in promoting metabolic health. Our guest for today's episode is Dana Remedios, who is a nutrition expert, a wealth of knowledge, and is here on behalf of Flora Health. So please join me in welcoming Dana onto the podcast again. Hello, Dana. Welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Marissa. Thanks for having me on again. It's good to see you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you back, and I'm looking forward to talking about healthy fats and oils today because this is definitely a trendy conversation in the wellness industry right now, and we really need to debunk some of the information that's out there and really support our community with the right information. So thank you for being that guest to do that with me today. And I want to start by just really getting back to the basics and talking about healthy fats as a whole. Can you start by explaining, the significance of healthy fats and oils and why they're incredibly supportive for metabolic health in particular?
For sure. So it's my pleasure to talk about the role of fat. I do notice that it's something that we still have vestiges of people being afraid of fat sometimes, but it's really important that we get fats for our metabolic health. Of course, we need all of the essential nutrients to be able to maintain health of all kinds. And the process of metabolism is what our body does to break down and digest all of the foods that we consume to break down macronutrients, including proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. So fats are one of the three main macronutrients, into the essential nutrients that we then absorb and use to maintain our health. And those essential nutrients that come from proteins are amino acids. So there's 9 of those. There are the things that we get out of carbohydrates, like starch and fiber. And then there's the things that we also need to get out of fat. And there are 2 essential fatty acids. So in getting those through metabolism from our diet, so it's a combination of both eating them and then metabolizing them to be able to get everything that we need to maintain our health. So we can see that there's some interaction there between fat and metabolism. Additionally, a healthy metabolism is something that we could loosely define as one that doesn't have spikes in things like insulin, blood sugar, blood pressure, and inflammation. If we have any spikes in those 4 things, that's stressful on the body. And so having the right balance of macronutrients, those proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, helps to stabilize the way that our body handles food so that we don't get those spikes. So in other words, getting enough fat can be a tool towards maintaining healthy metabolism. And finally, because there are some fats that are essential, they help us to avoid disease because we need all the essential nutrients to avoid disease. So to avoid metabolic disease, which is what those 4 spikes can turn into if left uncontrolled, they can become things like first, larger waist size or high blood pressure, but then they can become things like hypertension or heart disease, diabetes, if we don't control our blood sugar and insulin, for example. So to avoid those diseases, we want to maintain a healthy metabolism, but overall to maintain our health and avoid disease, we need to make sure we get all our nutrients. So some of the fatty acids are included in the essentials that we need to make sure that we have so that our metabolism can operate properly. So to sum it all up, we need a healthy metabolism to digest and absorb our nutrients, and we need our nutrients to be able to properly have metabolism functioning for us as well.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because there's a large population who is still in this little bit of scared mindset around healthy fats, right? And we are starting to educate and see the research and the support of that well-roundedness from metabolism to the macronutrients and that balance, which is so great. And also, as you said, so supportive for those conditions, whether it's cardiovascular, diabetes. You mentioned very briefly their inflammation, but in addition to those things, does healthy fat consumption and the impact that it has on our metabolism have an impact on also our lifestyle factors like exercise and sleep and things like that? Or do we see any relation between those two?
Great question. So of course, the way that we carry out our lifestyle, maybe including things like our activity and our sleep, can impact us at a physical level. So that would include impacting our metabolism. And then the way that we are eating and the way that we're metabolizing might also impact something like our sleep. So it can be a bit of a both sides of the coin kind of situation. Essentially, an active person is going to be metabolically healthier. So the more that you're physically active and also maintaining your muscle, the more easily you'll be able to balance things like your blood sugar, your insulin. The more likely it will be that you'll manage your blood pressure and keep it in a healthy place. There's also a relationship between exercise and inflammation. So by exercising, we teach the body how to make the molecules that can calm inflammation. So certainly by being active, we're likely to have better markers in all of these areas that we're watching in terms of metabolic health. In terms of sleep, there's a relationship there as well. So the kind of sleep that we get, whether it's good quality and enough, it's very similar to fatty acids. If we get good quality and enough, we're less likely to be inflamed. So there's a similar response of too much inflammation if we're not sleeping properly, and or if we're not getting the right inputs. And if we have higher blood sugar and insulin because we're not active, we're not exercising, that can actually make us feel fatigued, because what can happen if our metabolism isn't super healthy, blood sugar has a hard time actually getting into the cells where it can get used. It'll just stay in the system, in the blood vessels, in the bloodstream, not getting into the cells. So we feel tired because we're not able to use it. So we're not as likely to exercise. And if you're not sleeping well, you're also not as likely to exercise. So there's this whole complicated relationship where we need to do a little bit in all of these areas to support our healthy metabolic health.
Yeah. And we know like it's a really well-rounded holistic approach to whatever point of view we want to take right now on this. I know we're talking about metabolism and healthy fats today, but we could talk about this in relation to any other concern or conversation as well. So we know it's such a very well-rounded, holistic whole body approach. And I love that you touched on the quality of what those healthy fats in turn will give you the quality results that we're looking for as well. So I really want to quickly just highlight what quality, healthy, good fats would be for our listeners who maybe actually have no idea. So we've got, avocados, olives, coconut, which we're going to talk about in a bit as well. Any other top recommendations for those healthy fats that come to mind?
So when I was saying that, we can use a healthy fat to reduce spikes and have better metabolism, any healthy fat can fit into that slot. So it could be if you have a piece of bread and you want to manage whatever spike in blood sugar or whatnot might happen after eating that bread, you could put some avocado on that bread, or you could put salmon on that bread, or you could even drizzle some olive oil on top. And because all of those are sources of healthy fats, they would all do the trick. When it comes to getting into the details of different types of fatty acids that are out there, you don't need to remember all the different types of fatty acids to know that adding some fat to, carbohydrates in your diet are going to help you to balance your blood sugar, just like adding protein can also help you to just have a better overall, like a less spiky glycemic response to food. However, again, you need specific fatty acids to avoid metabolic degeneration and overall health degeneration and maintain your metabolic health and avoid metabolic disease. So it's two different aspects of what we're looking at. And so with that, what we're talking about in terms of what you might put on your toast, those could be monounsaturated fats, like those that come from olives, eating olives or having olive oil, or it might be those longer chain fatty acids like DHA, which is found in salmon, or it could be, again, in avocado, it's monounsaturated fats. Those are all fats that we consider healthy because they're not likely to be damaged. They're in their whole form right from the food, or in the case of olive oil, made by people that have been making it for centuries in a really traditional way that protects the end result. And so that's what makes these fats that won't be inflammatory. And so you can use them and they're mostly neutral or have a slight benefit to you. They're not going to cause inflammation for the most part. That's what makes them considered healthy. But because if we're looking at something like a monounsaturated fat or even the fat in salmon, it's not one of the essential fatty acids, you'll still have to find sources of those particular ones elsewhere for those other purposes for your metabolic health and metabolism.
Now, is that where you would say the role of omega-3 supplementation would come in to be supportive for those health benefits and in particular to the metabolic health as well?
So for the person that always chooses the avocado or the olive and never chooses the salmon, either because of preference or perhaps there are quite a few people who have seafood allergies, then for them, a supplement could be quite helpful. And in this case, we're thinking of a capsule that might supply DHA for them so that they can get that kind of fatty acid in supplement form. It can be from fish, but if they're allergic to fish or they are vegan or they prefer not to support fisheries, then they can also get it from an algae source. The thing is that is the perfect kind of fatty acid to supplement because you only need a small amount. So a capsule is really a perfect, convenient way to get that. When we are speaking of those other omega-3s, then we actually need those in foundational amounts. So those are better when we consume them by the spoonful. When we think of them as foods that are part of our diet and we consume them in greater quantities, that's the only way we're going to get the amount that we need because every single one of our cells will use it. So we need quite a bit. Whereas some of the other specific fatty acids, we just need a small amount, more appropriate for supplementing. Whereas with essential fatty acids, which are ALA and LA, those are an omega-3 and an omega-6. You want to get those and think of them more as food and ingest them in larger quantities.
So because there is several options for omega-3 supplementation, can you clarify how that in particular in formulations would align with metabolic health to be supportive for managing that?
So if we're specifically talking about the longest chain omega-3s, those are EPA and DHA. Those are the ones we normally associate with fish. And they have certainly been shown to be helpful, particularly for mood and sleep. And so if someone is struggling to sleep and they're trying to find a way to improve that, maybe those longer chain fatty acids is something that they should think about. And that's important for their overall metabolic health because lacking in sleep, even for 14 days, there have been some studies that have shown that can lower your ability to tap into your fat stores by up to 55%. So it does really change your metabolism, your ability to use fat for fuel, all of that. However, those types of omega-3s can't take the place of the other omega-3 ALA, which is considered essential. You can use ALA omega-3 if you have great enough quantities of it to actually produce EPA for your mood or DHA for your brain and your sleep, but it doesn't work as well in the reverse direction. So that is one important feature. The other thing is that even if it could work in the reverse direction, which some science is working on proving, we don't get enough from a DHA supplement to make up for not getting ALA. So we do need to get ALA regardless of whether we also need to get a supplement of DHA or not. And so all of us need ALA. And the reason I call it foundational instead of supplemental is because of that, because it's a foundational piece of our diet. So you can still take it as a supplement. You can still get it as a supplement product, but you want to think of it as foundational to your diet and really use that as a piece of your metabolic plan. Because if you don't have ALA omega-3, this essential fatty acid, you can't make the eicosanoids and other molecules that we need ALA in order to create. And eicosanoids aren't something that we've known about for a really long time. But now that we know about them, we understand that there are some that are important to enable us to sleep, and there are others that are important to enable us to build muscle. And so it's really going to help you with your metabolism, your metabolic rate, if you get this ALA type of omega-3, so that you can make the eicosanoids that you need to turn on fat burning and muscle building.
Amazing. So what is your recommendation for a high quality ALA supplement then?
So ALA is something that we would have had a lot more of just without having to seek it out in the past, because it was in more of the wild greens that we would have eaten, and then it would have been, those greens would have been eaten by the animals that we ate, and we also would have been favoring the organs of those animals more often. And so people might wonder, it's only in a few foods, then how come our bodies are so used to having it? And so that explains a little bit of why it's available in things like flax. It's available in foods that are a little bit more exotic, like sacha inchi or camelina as well. But flax is the most common one, especially in Canada. Our prairies grow it very well, and that's where most of us would get our ALA essential omega-3. And so the tricky thing about that is the other essential fatty acid, there's a little bit of it in flax, but not quite enough. So, you do have to consume a fair amount of flax. And then, sometimes people, after some time, they find they're still not getting quite enough of the other essential fatty acid, which is LA. So combining it is usually what people end up doing with other seed-based sources of LA. So you can get that from other seeds as well, like pumpkin, sesame, sunflower. And that's often what people do.
Okay. And Flora has a flax oil, which we carry in store. And I love this. I've used this flax oil on many things, salad dressings, just topping with things. Can you talk more in particular about why this Flora product is superior?
Absolutely. So the thing about getting your essential fatty acids is what they found when they study people that have depression or problems sleeping is, okay, they absolutely are low in omega-3s. And none of us are surprised to hear that, because we expect that at this point. But more surprisingly, they have found that they're still low in the essential omega-6, or at least they're functionally deficient in it. So it turns out that just getting omega-6 isn't enough. If it's damaged, your body can't use it. And so this is where going to Flora, who've been making oils with health in mind and making such an important point of doing so, only bottling in glass, making sure that they're not exposing the seeds to light or to oxygen, and being very picky in choosing the seeds in the first place is really important, because if the oil that you're getting is damaged, you actually aren't able to make use of it. Once you supplement with the right fatty acids and they're not damaged, those symptoms can improve. So that's what they found in studies. And there's actually, I think, tens of thousands of studies at this point proving that you need to get these 2 essential fatty acids. But there's also some studies showing that these fatty acids, like LA omega-6, can cause health problems. And so why is that? The reason for that is that those studies use damaged oils. So we need these fatty acids, but we absolutely maintain that they have to be undamaged. And so that's why Flora's flax oil or Flora's Udo's oil, all the oils that are made at Flora are made very, very carefully to ensure that none of the molecules are getting damaged by the process. And even before we make the oil, or Flora makes the oil, the pressing and all of that, even before that, the seed selection process is extremely careful. So the issue with flax is that it can often preferentially absorb heavy metals like cadmium, and then it's not so good for your health. So Flora's oil does not have a cadmium issue, whereas most flax oils do. So this is another reason why I particularly like recommending ours. I feel very confident with it.
Absolutely. And that's a whole other conversation, hopefully for another time, about heavy metals and things like that that are present in a lot of seeds. And I think that the conversation's starting because we've seen this about seed oils and the conversation about the healthiness of them, the debate really of different seed oils. And it really, a big piece of that is the way in which they're manufactured, what they're sprayed with, things like that. So can you maybe explain a little bit more clearly for our listeners why not all seed oils are a great source of healthy fats for promoting metabolic health?
So when we speak about metabolic health, there are those 4 indicators that we're not doing well with our metabolic health: the high insulin, the high blood pressure, high blood sugar, too much inflammation. And if you get seeds that are sprayed, they're going to be put through a whole bunch of processes, meaning any seed that's not organic, they're going to get put through a whole bunch of processes trying to reduce those pesticides. And so to reduce the pesticides, they put them through a number of commercial processes. And the result is a damaged molecule in a damaged oil. So that fatty acid molecule isn't usable by the body the way that it needs to be. The trouble is, if you have pesticides or you have heavy metals, those are potentially going to also contribute to inflammation and other types of problems. And if you get damaged molecules, it's not going to help you with your cell membranes or the other things that fatty acids generally do help with. They're normally integrated into every cell membrane, and that cell membrane is really important for cell communication to the next cell over. And it also, the membrane is what regulates toxins getting out of the cell and nutrients getting into the cell. And again, metabolism is all about not just digesting your food, but appropriately absorbing those nutrients. And again, if your cell membrane isn't working, you can't absorb nutrients. And we don't just mean micronutrients, but we mean things like sugar too. And so sugar can't get into the cell to give you energy. And so you're very tired, but you have all this blood sugar that you can't burn off because you don't have the energy to do it. So this is a cycle that we want to help people avoid. We want to help them get the fatty acids that can improve inflammation markers, that can actually help them to maintain healthy blood pressure, and not the reverse.
That was like the perfect summary of all of the benefits. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about for seed oils, and the conversation is so big, but I think it's just important to understand the process and what is there and what's not there in terms of the quality of what you're consuming. And I want to pivot a little bit and talk about coconut oil, because this is another healthy fat, we'll put in quotations here, that it's a little bit of a controversial product to consume, in particular for metabolic health. What's your opinions? Do we include it? Do we avoid it? Do we limit it? What do you think?
Great question. I'm a firm believer in biochemical individuality. Coconut oil is no exception from that. What that really means is we're all going to relate or respond to coconut oil a little bit differently. And the reason that I say that is that it's a saturated fat. So there are going to be some genetic predispositions to how you're going to handle saturated fat. For example, a lot of people of South Asian backgrounds find that actually saturated fats can contribute to some of those markers of metabolic degeneration, for example, might relate to things like their insulin levels, or might spike some of those other markers. However, coconut oil for me is something I do include. I have moderately good genes with regard to saturated fat, so I can consume some of it. The thing is, it's not a priority. And the reason that I say that is the first thing I have to think of including are the essential fatty acids, because I know that I need to get those to maintain my essential health from the cell level up at every cell. Then next, I might consider what other fatty acids do I need to get for any other purpose? Like, do I need to get, for example, that DHA for my brain, my sleep, or do I need to get some of that EPA for my mood, for example? And at that point, how much room do I have in my diet for fat? So for people that have a higher fat diet because they follow just a high fat, low carb, or maybe they follow even a ketogenic diet, they probably have a lot more room. If they want to have coconut oil, they've got a lot of room for coconut oil or some of the derivatives of coconut oil, like MCT oil, lots of space for that, lots of space for, olive oil and a whole bunch of other things. I might have a little bit less if I follow a slightly more zone diet kind of, or a more 30-30-30 kind of diet. So then for me, I might not have as much room for coconut oil, just maybe a little bit that I might choose to use in circumstances where I like the stability of it, and or I'm baking, for example. Then with baking, I'm going to heat it up. Then I know that that's maybe a better choice for me than using something like a flax oil wouldn't be appropriate there.
Yes, such great advice. Good tips. And I love that. It's so individualized for everybody, where their goals are, what they're working towards, what their health conditions are. All of those things are important to consider no matter what food or even supplementation we're talking about. So as we wrap up this episode, I would love if you could share with our listeners some practical tips on how to strike a balance between various sources of healthy fats for optimal metabolic health.
Mm-hmm. As I was saying before, it can be a bit of a thought process to make sure that you're getting ALA and then also getting LA, which are the two essential fatty acids. And while I love flax oil to make sure that I'm getting the bulk of my ALA, it is something that is maybe not going to appeal to everyone from a taste perspective, or it isn't necessarily going to be easy to balance because you've got to think about all these other seeds. So one of the things that can be a nice shortcut is to get Udo's oil. It's a 3-6-9 blend that includes all the omega-3 that's essential, all the omega-6 that's essential, and it blends in that perfect amount of nice tasting oils that sort of balance out the flax, because flax, depending on the season, can sometimes have a bit of a earthy or even a slightly bitter note to it, even when it's in perfect condition. So I find that those other oils mellow out the flavor enough so that if I want to add it to something like oatmeal where I'm going to taste it, it's really easy to add it in, and I like the taste. You can also add it to something like smoothies. Usually picking a dish that you have very often and making it a habit to add it to that is the easiest way to get into the habit of including it every single day, so that you're really maintaining a good level. And you probably want a little more in the winter than in the summer. So if you have some recipes that you consume in the winter that you can add it to, then that's usually the perfect way to get in your Udo's 3-6-9. And for me, I actually like to encourage myself to have a salad every day. And so making a salad dressing once a week, I just use Udo's oil and then, a little bit of vinegar or lemon juice. And if you want to get fancy, you can add some herbs and garlic or something. Some people go half and half with olive oil. Some people just use all Udo's oil. And that's a really great way to make sure that you're eating some every single day, because you know that you're making a healthy salad dressing that's good for you. And then you're also getting your greens.
Amazing. Such great tips and so practical. That's easy little things that we can start to do every day to get those oils and a good balance in. Dana, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights to the world of healthy fats and how much they have an impact on our metabolic health. It's been a very informational discussion today, and I'm really grateful for you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Awesome. And to our listeners, I just want to remind you that supplementation is there to fill in the gaps, but a well-balanced diet that's rich in healthy fats is the cornerstone for good metabolic health. And then start to add in these different oils, whether it's flax oil or again, the Udo's 369 blend, wherever your needs have to be met. So to learn more about these products, please pop into one of our Joanne's Place locations and talk to one of our amazing staff about which product would be best suited for you. Quick disclaimer here, any information shared on the Wellness on Purpose podcast is not intended to treat, diagnose, or for the prescription of any medication. Please contact your healthcare professional before use and for further information. If you're still here, thank you so much for tuning in today's episode. If you want to learn more about the topics that we covered in today's episode, as well as the products, you've got two options. You can head over to our Joanne's Place website to review the show notes. We'll leave that in the description below. Or you can pop into one of our Joanne's Place locations and talk to one of our amazing staff. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, go over to your preferred platform, follow our page, and then find us over on social media so you're notified as soon as a new episode is released. That's all for now, and we'll see you in the next episode.